The Guardians 2025 season is officially in the books, and after spending the weekend with time to reflect, does that change how we process what happened this season? We'll talk about that in today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into a Monday, October 6th edition, 2025 of Locked On Guardians. The Guardians season may be over. You may have not had any Guardians baseball to watch over the weekend, but you're still here. We're still here. We got lots of Guardians stuff to talk about here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, your Cleveland Guardians every day. We are the only daily Cleveland Guardians podcast talking about your team from the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. And we'll probably get into most of that on today's show. We'll talk if the Guardians threaded the needle this year, if they developed and contended. We'll talk about if you can have it both ways, enjoying the end of the season and also being disappointed at the result. And does time of when this season took place in terms of when things started were south and north affect how you feel about the season? I'm Justin Lada, one of your two co-hosts. Been here for the last 3 years, and I've also spent 18 years covering the Guardians minor league system.
I'm Jeff Ellis. I've been here since Locked On decided to expand into baseball. Before that, I was a national writer at Scout in 24/7, focused on prospects in the draft. I want to thank all of our everydayers for joining us. And on top of that, I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is that you get podcasts.
Yeah, shout out to all the everydayers, all the insiders. I will be scheduling a insiders meetup, like a virtual chat, sometime this week to reflect. So if you want to be part of that, sign up at joinsubtext.com/lockdownguardians. We'll probably do it every month during the off season, just to reflect on things and look ahead to the off season overall. And we love to chat with that community, and we'd love for you to be part of it with us. So hang out with us over here. And today's episode, of course, brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, if you're a new customer, you can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. All right, so we had some time to obviously sit back this weekend and not watch Guardians baseball. Had to watch playoff baseball go on without them, which stinks. There's no way around it. That really stinks. Even if things this season were kind of crazy, and the fact they were in the first place changes things, the way things unrolled this season. That being said, I'm curious to see how people view it from the other direction. So obviously the Tigers, right, had that season last year where they were the team that was chasing down a playoff spot at the end of the season, and they got in and they won a playoff series, right? They beat the Astros. They came to Cleveland. It was a 5-game series, and everybody expected the Tigers to build off that. That's why they were the division favorites coming into the year. Most places, I mean, a lot of people felt like they were going to take the division. They almost did, but they could not hold a 15.5 game lead. We're not going to let that go here. I'm sure someone will comment about that at some point.
Yes.
No, everyone feels very good about that. But that being said, the Tigers, they got off to a great start this year. The Guardians obviously did not. They were, floating around.
They had a solid start, and then the middle was soft. It was like a valley.
The middle was bad. Yes, June and July were not good. But they were, the team was hovering around 500.
July was okay. It was just that beginning of July. Right.
Yeah, and they weren't playing great baseball early on. Like there was a lot of defensive issues. The pitching still hadn't found its footing. They're giving a lot of leadoff home runs. The hitting hadn't come around, so there was still a lot of warts early in the season, right? And obviously, Clase had that terrible April. I said his name. I have to go back and edit that because I'm not saying his name still. But the Guardians obviously had a great September, and I'm wondering how people. And how, Jeff, how you feel, if you feel any differently. Would it have made a difference to you if the Guardians had that 20-7 April, the Tigers' hot start, and then at the end blew the division, but they got in and won the wild card series, or they had a hot start, kind of like a year ago, right? They had a hot start a year ago, and then it was kind of soft in the middle, and they picked things back up at the end last year too to hold on to the division because the Royals got within a game. would you have rather the Guardians got off to a good start this year? Because last year, given how far the Guardians got, we thought they were going to come in this year and build off that, which is the linear thinking, which we know isn't always the case. So do you feel like you're more optimistic and you enjoyed the season more because your last impression of this team, besides the playoffs, was that great September run that's historic? Or does it not matter because, they spent all season either being in the middle or, crappy?
I'll say I didn't necessarily think you build on what happened just because getting the ALCS is so rare. Like you can't count, like I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, after you make the ALCS, you got to make the world. Like that's not how this works. That's not how baseball works. Getting the ALCS is a guarantee of nothing the next year. The Arizona Diamondbacks made the World Series, went out and signed the best free agent pitcher in the market. And, I know there was some years in between where they didn't even make they missed the playoff by a game last year and they haven't got back, right? Instead they did a sell-off this year. So there's no guarantee.
And still almost made the playoffs.
They did.
Close.
Yeah, it was phenomenal actually what they did, and especially because the guy they got for Suarez, Tyler Locklear, did nothing. Like had a 58 WRC plus. I was looking up rosters.
Shocking.
So, they got like nothing in return in terms of what could help them now. But yeah, like baseball is not a guaranteed sport. There is no anything that says, hey, we got this far, we're going to take a step forward next year. And that's just, unless you're like the Yankees and you go out and buy Max Fried and you go out and buy Carlos Rondon and you go out and, get all of those pieces that way, the odds are never going to be like in your favor that you're going to make the ALCS in multiple years. Seattle, that was their first playoff run at home since 2001. Like, and it's a team in a pretty big market in Seattle that has gone out and spent over the years, and this is their first playoff run in over 20 plus years. You can't have a guarantee in baseball. So I put that here. Now to go back to your I'm sorry, I missed that.
The Angels, just saying.
Yeah, the Angels are basically what would happen if Jimmy Haslam owned a baseball team. We can say that.
There we go. That's another comment for another day, but that's a great point. Save that one for a future debate.
If you want an owner who interferes, makes bad contracts, overpays for things, and gets in the way of development, you got Artie Moreno in Anaheim.
Yeah, Artie Moreno.
But I do feel better this year in your two scenarios because what you're talking about, like that whole, and remember at the start of this year when things are going south, we were comparing it to, what year was that? Like 2013, where they had the hot start and then Manny Acta and it completely fell apart.
That's 12. That was
12. I couldn't. Yeah, that's right. 12 because I still live in New York.
No, was that 11? I think it was 11.
Might have been. It was 11 or 12. I was living in New York at the time. That's what I remember.
It was the year Derek Lowe had the greatest first month of the season of his career, and then he was gone by July.
Chris Perez had a good run, and then got drugs shipped to his house. Right, it was,
and his dog's name.
Yes, a whole set of craziness. But we were all worried. We kind of forget how much we were worried. Making that comparison now, and obviously this team did not fall as hard as that team did. But when you're looking at what has happened, and teams if they had that late fall apart, that means several guys wouldn't have taken steps forward that we saw this year. Like Gavin Williams in the second half was a different pitcher. A lot of people forget how bad he was in May, like how mid and mediocre he was at the start of the year, and how awesome he was at the end. Tanner, last few starts, really looked to get on track. Joey Cantillo had a higher F4 and FIP than Gavin Williams in the last month. Like a lot of great progress there. Tim Herron looked like he was starting to get back to Tim Herron from a year ago. A lot of positive progress. You had a lot of good moments on young players progressing. CJ Kavis did not look out of place. Was he great? No. And we're going to forget about the error. But did he have his moments? Absolutely.
Still not an error, by the way. Sorry. Still not an error.
It's an error. I don't care. It's an error. But it's just that thing where you definitely don't want the collapse. You want a team that built the whole way because now we have positive momentum. There's things that definitely improved over the course of the year.
Yeah. We'll talk more about how time affects the perception of the team and the outlook going into the offseason. We'll talk about the ability to have it both ways. Enjoying the Guardians. I hate to use the word enjoy because I know it's everyone's least favorite word in Cleveland. Enjoying the Guardians' run at the end of the season, but also disappointment over how the season ended as a whole. On the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. Boy, the NFL season, it is a little bit crazy. You got a Baltimore Ravens team that's toast already, probably. But FanDuel wants to make sure you are not toast, so you have an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, if you're a new customer, bet just $5, get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. If you pick a bet and you put down $5 if you're a first-time customer, if it hits, you're going to get $300 to spend in bonus bets across the FanDuel app. I was just kind of checking Tuesday to see if the Yankees will be going home after the Blue Jays have had their way with them offensively. The Yankees are favored by a run and a half. The over-under is 7. An old friend, Shane Bieber, is pitching on Tuesday. My heart would say, go with Shane Bieber. He has the playoff experience, and the Toronto Bats are hot. So if you're waiting, don't wait any longer because this is an opportunity that won't be here forever. Visit FanDuel.com and download the FanDuel app to get started. Appreciate everybody who is sticking with us as we head into the offseason. There's plenty of things to talk about, and I want to remind everybody listening that we are still 5 days a week up until the winter meetings. So after the winter meetings ends, the second week of December, we'll switch down to 3 days a week. So we've still got a solid 2 months here of bringing you Guardians content every single day this offseason. So hit the bell on YouTube so you get every episode. Anytime the news breaks, we'll have a video on that as well. And make sure you're auto-downloading on audio so you don't miss an episode. If you don't want to listen every single day, make sure you do all that stuff so you catch up on things you miss, because we do have a lot to talk about this offseason, and we'd love for you to be here with us. We'll do all kinds of fun stuff. All right, a couple more things on the timing, Jeff, of the season. I will say I think it's definitely, because human bias is going to say the most recent thing. If it was good, you're going to view it as good. Had the Guardians just squeaked into the playoffs the way the Tigers did after a hot start, and they lost the series, I would have they did lose the series, but if they had been should have been the other foot and the Tigers lost that series, you'd be disappointed. The Tigers did sort of have a linear path, right? They built on what happened last season, started off really good and ended poorly. I think if I was the Guardians or the Tigers situation, and had lost that series, I think I'd be a little more disappointed. But like you said, that's who the Guardians
about to just for another day. We'll have to do it, but it's like the roster side of it. Like the Tigers, remember next year is the last year they have a Scooble, and they did have the advantage of Scooble in this series. But there's also the side, like when you're talking about the Guardians, next 2 years, no one has to leave, right? Like that's the thing. Next 2 years, no one has to hit free agency. You can trade them after that, but you have, I believe, 3 years of control on or more on every player on the roster.
Just about, yeah. We'll dive into the state of the roster heading in the offseason on tomorrow's show. This is more about bridging the gap between looking back at 2025 and moving into looking ahead to 2026. Yeah, I think the timing of it all makes it very interesting, and that's always going to be how it works for Cleveland. I think I got a point I want to make. I think that the reason Cleveland's a good second half team, I'll say that for segment 3. So stick around for that, because I got a reason why I think Cleveland's always a good second half team. So stick around for that. I think the other thing is too, I don't know who the commenter was, so I'm sorry, commenter, whoever this was, but I know some people were like, "Oh, the third segment on Friday, I feel like I was getting scolded by a teacher," which one of us here is a teacher, and I think I was doing more of the yelling, but
not as much as the great Nick Wilson did. I shout out to Nick.
Yeah. Nick's, like I said on Twitter, Nick's mic was on for that segment.
Yes.
Some people though didn't like the way he came off in that segment, and I will say this: I think you can have it both ways. I think we don't need to be so black and white here. I think life is a lot about the gray area anyway. I think we could be happy with history, right? Like we could say, hey, the Guardians came back from 15.5 down to win the division and played really fun baseball in September, and things were really difficult this season. At the same time, I think it's also fair to go back and say, okay, this is one of the worst offenses in Major League Baseball to ever make the postseason. And the fact that it was a 15.5 game deficit at one point also is something I think you want to look at and say, that's probably not great. Like you could say, I think you're 100% right. There are no guarantees about getting back to where you were a year before or any further. I mean, unless you're 8-year-old Justin, who the Indians lost the World Series in '97, and my dad was upset, and I said, "Oh, they'll be back next year. It's fine," because I was 8, and the team had been to the World Series twice in the last 3 years, so I just assumed they'd go to the World Series almost every year. Hard lesson to learn throughout the rest of my life, I will say, as a baseball fan. But the Yankees, like, they're facing elimination. They were the World Series a year ago, and like you said, they went out and they bought Max Fried. Well, guess what? Max Fried got torched by the Blue Jays. Also a conversation for another day, I think. But
I think we
they're
have
close
to at
to
least
going home.
we also I've got to mention here because people are going to bring it up on the show tomorrow. At some point, I think we'll have to talk about playoff nailer who just might have cost the Mariners this game.
Yep. We'll have to talk about that. I think we'll talk about some old friends who are in the playoffs and keep track, because the Cleveland North is on the verge of going to the ALCS for the first time since 2016. So that'll be interesting when they ironically faced off against Cleveland. But I think it's fair to say, like, even if it's hard to get back to where you were a year ago, there's no guarantees, because everybody assumed after 2016 Cleveland would be better in 2017, and they were record-wise because of the 20-game winning streak, but they were knocked out in the LDS by the Yankees. But I think you're right. Like, you can't assume you're going to be back next year. There's no guarantees. But at the same time, I think it's fair to say the team, as good as they were a year ago, falling back to 15 and a half games behind the division leader is probably something that, is not great, and we should also consider that in how you reflect on the season. Am I wrong? Like, I feel like that still has to be factored into the reflection and reality of how things unfolded in 2025.
No, I think that's fair. I agree with you. I know it's boring when I agree with you, but yeah, I think it has to be part of it, just because it does
Some
paint a
people think
much
we don't
different
agree
picture.
that much.
Yeah. Well, some people secretly think we don't like each other either. So who knows what people think out there. But yeah, I agree. It's having, like I said, because if they fell apart at the end, instead of having all those great stories I talked about, it's like, well, maybe Gavin had one good month and regressed. Maybe Tanner never figures it out. Maybe Joey Cantillo is a mess and has to go to like. Maybe Parker Messick doesn't have, a dramatic debut. Like, all these good stories, all of this stuff. If you collapse in the second half, that's not there, right? It's that these guys fell apart. It probably means, like, maybe Jose Ramirez got hurt. I mean, really, to me, the most concerning thing, I got to be honest, in the second half was Stephen Kwan. Like, that's where my concern went. That was really, other than that, it's like, the bullpen had its ups and downs. There are a lot of players who had some good and bad moments, but like over the course of the year, now I know people were like, Nolan Jones. Yeah, he was terrible. Let's just move on. I think the team's going to move on. Let's move on. But like, when you look at those central important pieces, all of them either held steady or improved. And even like Bo Naylor, who I've been very, very critical of and did like a once a month, like, let's find a catcher to trade for. Like, he had his moments. Let's see if he can maintain some of those, because the catcher market is terrible. So, you got to figure stuff out. But I do feel very bullish because of that, because of the way the season played out.
Agreed. Like, coming out of spring training, we all felt like, remember all the hype stories around Gavin Williams, right? Everyone was buying into what
I said he'd be the best pitcher on the team. You can go back. I got that one right.
And again, we didn't say when. We didn't know when. And my point to that is, what if Gavin Williams did live up to the hype early on? Like, what if his best months of the year were April and May, and then he has the reversal and is bad at the end of the year, like he goes to the issue at the end of the year. Same with Tanner. Like, we assumed coming out of the spring training, Tanner was going to be the ace. He got the contract. He was the playoff starter for game 1 last year. We assumed that he was going to take the leap, and then instead he spent most of the year either getting unlucky, being frustrated about bad luck, and just in general having issues with mechanics and command and overall frustrations. But what if that's reversed? What if he comes out and has a great start to the year, and then he, stumbles down the finish line? They still make the playoffs. Like, we're not looking at it. We're looking at it as if we're looking at it linearly, which we know isn't always true. We're looking at it as all these good things happen at the end of the season. So we assume that gives us optimism for 2026. But we know it's not always the case, that those things aren't necessarily going to carry over, which is why the offseason is so important, to build in what you can to reduce random variance and injury and things not happening linearly, which is especially important when you have a young roster, and it's going to be a young roster next year.
No, agreed.
Yeah. All right. I have a theory about why the Guardians are always a better team in September, and it has to do with their favorite term, threading the needle. We'll talk about that next on today's Locked On Guardians.
Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money is. It's the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. Monarch Money is built for people with busy lives. If you're putting off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorizations of your spending, finally feel control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Okay, I am that person. I am paying for like 7 different services right now. Every time I talk to my wife, I'm like, which one can we cut? Can we cut Paramount Plus? No, it's got Paw Patrol. Can we cut Netflix? No, it's got Unicorn Academy. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. I can't cut ESPN because that's where I just watched, the Guardians. I want to watch the postseason. What can you cut? That's where Monarch Money can help you out. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB.
Thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today, every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. We love being part of your daily routine. If you are locked in to Locked On and you love the MLB playoffs, I know not everybody is listening to the MLB playoffs or watching because they can't handle it after the Guardians lost. I totally understand. But whether you're watching it or you're not and you still want to follow it, I highly recommend over on the Locked On MLB channel, the Locked On MLB Game Night, where they cover every game every night until a World Series champion is crowned, and they get insights from all of the hosts at Locked On that only our local experts can provide. You can't get that stuff at the national level on playoff coverage. So check that out if you want local insights on all the playoff teams in a nice half-hour format. So that's always a good show. I listen to that every day because it helps me keep up with things around the league as well. All right, Jeff. I think maybe this is more obvious. Not really like reinventing the wheel here. I'm not discovering fire, but I think it makes a lot of sense now that I've said it out loud. The Guardians, Cleveland, whatever, are a better second half team, a better September team, because they are always trying to thread the needle. They are always trying to win and develop young players. And what happens is that you get those players, they come up, whether it's Stephen Kwan in April, and then this is not necessarily this year, but his rookie year in 2022. You get these guys who come up in April or May or July or whatever it is, and they have some time to settle in. And by the end of the year, they've gone through it and they've developed. They've figured things out a little bit, or at least they've got some success and they can build off things. Because their roster is always young, because they're always trying to develop while contending, they are always a better September team for the most part. Not every year, but when they are, doing a little bit of both, that's why they usually have a good finish to the season, because a lot of the young players have gotten a couple months of experience.
I think there's another level to that as well. I think it's that some of the players have gotten another level have gotten the experience, but then it's also you're getting the guys who are freshly called up, who the book isn't out on, who teams don't know about the first looks. So it's not just the guys who figure it out. You're also threading the needle, because calling them up that late is not going to have any effect on service time. So it is a double threading the needle, just to expand upon your point.
Yeah, and I think the answer to this is yes. I think I was going to ask, did the Guardians thread the needle this year? I think they threaded the needle of all needles, because they were, either mediocre or bad this year at points, and they were great in September. So I would say they definitely threaded the needle this year, because there was a lot of development. And I know we think of development as like, rookies and CJ Kafis and whoever else, comes up. But development is also the things we've talked about today, which is Gavin Williams had high expectations coming out of spring training and didn't necessarily jump right into them out of the gate. It took some time. Tanner Bibee had to go through an extended stretch of struggles in his major league career for the first time. Like, this was probably the worst. It's definitely the worst year he's had as a pro so far. And he had to go through that. Like, it's not always just rookies. It's guys we always expect year 3 to be the leap year, but like we said, nothing in life is linear. Nothing in baseball is linear. So just because we think that year 3 is going to be the leap, it's not always the leap. There are still adjustments and, injuries and the league kind of figuring you out and the need to adjust back. Those things always happen. So a lot of development happened this year, right? Like Tanner, I would say Gavin, Cade Smith had to figure out how to be a closer. Like he said himself, it's a little bit different. They had to have some different guys. They had new coaches and new spots too. Like they had a new bullpen coach and
had a new hitting coach halfway through the year.
Yeah, they had a brand new hitting coach who had been in the organization,
but then they lost one of their like major league level hitting coaches as well.
To Vanderbilt, yeah. So you have that, and you have the gambling investigation, and same for Stephen Vogt. Like you never go into a season like, yes, you go into a season, you're like, oh, this is how you deal with injuries, and this is how you deal with guys who are struggling, and do you let them play through it? Do you bench them and give them a mental break? Those are things that you go into the season probably expecting to deal with. I don't think you ever go into a season expecting, well, I'm going to lose my Hall of Fame closer to a gambling investigation, and we're going to lose our biggest offseason trade acquisition to a gambling investigation for the pitching that we were desperately trying to fix. Like there's no like thought in your mind in spring training you're going to deal with those things. And to be fair, those things did not wreck the Guardians. Like they were already mediocre to bad when those things happened. They got better after that, which is the wild part of the season, really. So we can't really blame their poor performance on those two things because they were already pretty mediocre to bad shape with them here on the team. But that being said, I do think obviously they contended. It wasn't really 1 month, kind of, but they contended and they developed. So I think they threaded the needle they always say they're going to thread. The problem is if they're going to actually thread it the way everybody wants, they have to develop young players and win a World Series, which is even more difficult to do than what they did this year.
Yeah. And I think the one thing we talked about off air with this threading of the needle, and part of the reason I do feel better in some respects about where they are heading is this time a year ago, like we were excited for Lada, we were excited for Brito, but a lot of the prospects, we knew Messick needed more time. We knew Peterson needed more time. Both those guys were in our top 10 at the end of last year.
Right.
And now it's like Ralphy Velasquez just destroyed AA. Like he had a chainsaw in one hand and a blowtorch in the other. Like, I mean, he was really good. Like this is a guy to get excited about. Angel Janao had some ups and downs, but he's still a great player, great power. Bazana was hurt, but like the difference is a year ago, a lot of these guys I'm talking about had not even hit AA yet. Now you're having guys hit at the higher levels of the minors. You have your guys moving up. The starting pitching was a mess last year. Starting pitching feels somewhat established right now, right? Like I feel pretty good about starting pitching. Now you can never feel great because it's starting pitching and tomorrow everyone can get hurt, but I feel pretty good about starting pitching. The pen, I'm having big hope for Espino and Yorman Gomez late next year, but like feeling good about the pen, feeling good about pitching. Hitting was a disaster. There's no way around it. I can't clean it up. I can't say anything other than it was bad, but those guys are coming. Those guys are gaining. What's the line for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? I've actually never seen the movie. Those guys are fast. Who's that? Like, I don't know, but that's what's happening with those prospects. It's going to get interesting. And that's why I feel better. Because a year ago, it's like, okay, so who are the reinforcements who are going to be ready at the start of the year? Like, I would have said maybe Brito and Delauder, and that's it. And, who's going to be ready early? It would have been those two guys. And now I'm feeling really good about the next wave getting closer. So you're going to take what you've developed this year. You're going to take what you've had. Again, it's never perfect. Guys will regress. There'll be ups and downs, but feeling very good about where they are relative to the next wave coming in to help them out. And that's where the threading the needle is important next year as well. And maybe more what I talked about the near part with some of those guys who are in AA to end the year, where that could be, if they need a hitter late, maybe it's, Ralphie who gets added to this team in September and has a September to remember. Maybe he has that Evan Carter-esque run. But there's enough guys that it could be anyone. It could be Cooper Ingle. Who knows? But we're going to have players making impacts next year. Threading the needle is more important because the waves are starting to hit.
Do you remember that Spencer Howard started a game for the Guardians in
2024? Yeah, he was the worst starter in baseball. That's how desperate they were. I mean, it was bad. Like he's been
Carlos
effective
Carrasco.
Kraska started games for the Yankees and the Braves this year. Spencer Howard's been good over in Asia somewhere. I'm not sure which Asian one he had. A
Good for him.
He found his level.
Yeah, which is overseas. Good for him though. That's that. You're right. That's how bad pitching was. So the Guardians went out and they decided that over the offseason, pitching was the thing to improve, and some of those improvements came internally, but some of them came externally. At least they were supposed to. At least the depth though is there. Like you saw steps forward from Cantillo, from Bibee, from Williams, from Messick. Logan Allen wasn't bad this year. He had his good moments and some rough ones, but overall was a solid contributor. They lost Ben Lively. Hopefully he'll be back next year, healthy.
Did we not even need Ben Lively?
They may not.
That's a nice situation to have.
Yeah. Cal Steven hopefully is part of a group next year that might be reinforcements if you need it. So there was a lot of positive development on the pitching side of things, and the hitting side of things, like you said, a lot of guys are coming. The guys that should have been hitting reinforcements this year really weren't because of health. And you did get to see CJ Capus, and finally you did get to see Valera and DeLauder, which I don't know that I ever believed we'd see either. I thought it'd be great if we saw one of those guys. We saw two of those guys start next to each other in a playoff series. And, one of them made a home run. The other one made a great defensive play after a bad defensive play. And also had a walk and a hit in the playoff series. So those are things I never thought I'd see either. And we saw that anyway. So it was, I think they definitely threaded the needle. And again, I want to say this too. It's like it's fair to be disappointed that they did not get back to where they were a year ago, which is hard. Yes. But they did not take the step. They did take a step back this year overall, and they still made the playoffs. If you could take a step back and still be a contender, I still say that's pretty good when you got into the playoffs anyway. But you can be happy with what they did in September and feel positive, and also say, things didn't go that well this season. There's things to fix. I think we had the commenter said it right. Like you can see it both ways. I've heard it both ways. Comment below if you know it. That's from Jeff on tomorrow's show. We'll talk about the state of the roster. We'll talk about who should be back, who won't be back, who might be back, and we'll kind of look ahead to some 40-man roster decisions. Tuesday, the Guardians will have their exit interviews, and then also, by the way, Daniel Spino starting on Tuesday in the AFL. The AFL starts today. We'll have some updates on that as well.
Thank you all for going with us. No, for joining us. And as we always say, go Guardians, go.